So welcome everybody. This is Steve Cady with Nexus for Change and Bowling Green State University, where I have the pleasure of teaching and the honor of teaching in our Master of Organization Development program. And we have a great topic today, and our main sponsor is the International Society for Organization Development. And Kim is here representing ISODC, International Society for Organization Development and Change. And so, Kim, you want to introduce a little bit about ISODC and what interests you in the topic for today?
Thank you, Steve. We at the International Society for Organization Development and Change are pleased to sponsor this webinar today. I would like to encourage all who are listening to check out our newly enhanced website at isodc.org to learn more about the International Society for Organization Development and Change. The change part is new. That's a new addition that we've added recently to see how you can become part of this great organization. We also have two conferences that are coming up. The first is in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin in May, which Steve Cady will be a keynote speaker and leading a workshop on large-scale change, which we are very excited about, as well as an international conference in Amsterdam in July. So again, please check out isodc.org for more information. And I know we're in for some really thoughtful insights today on how to foster better collaboration in our lives. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. And I'm really glad, and I appreciate all the work that you all are doing with ISODC to help connect everybody around the world that's doing important work. And you know, this work is not easy, and sometimes people feel alone. And I hear that so often. And it's not that everybody is alone. It's just sometimes we don't have ways of connecting and meeting with each other. So this webinar and Nexus is all about that. And what ISODC is doing is really important. So thank you for all that you're doing. And with that, collaboration is our topic today. Change the interaction, change the results, 4 keys that change everything. And Judith and Fred are one of the most important people, in my mind, to our field, to helping us stay connected, to helping us be relevant, to helping us continue the important work in the world. And your books and all the stuff that you all have written and put out there and produced, you know, it just helps all of us. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for being here today. If you could introduce a little bit of yourself to the group, as well as why does this topic matter to you? And we can start with Judith and maybe Fred, or Fred and Judith, however you all would like to introduce yourself.
Fred, why don't you start?
So one, I want to thank you, Steve. I want to thank everybody for being a part of this with us. Prior to the start of the webinar, Steve was asking us how do we kind of identify ourselves in the world these days. And the thing that came to mind first for me was explorer. I just feel like we're living in incredibly wonderful, exciting, and challenging times. And I see the work that Judith and I are doing and what we're doing in the Khalil Jameson Consulting Group is really being in a world where there's just so many questions and challenges in front of us, and trying to sort out how those apply to OD and how they apply to us helping organizations be the best they can be for people. So I'm Fred Miller. I've been a practitioner for 40-some years. Worked internal for a while, and then with this consulting firm for 30-some years. The Khalil Jameson Consulting Group is a management consulting firm that really specializes in the interactions that people have inside of organizations and wanting those interactions to be improved, eliminate waste, but most importantly, creating organizations that work for human beings. I think we've done a good job of making organizations work for machines and other factors, finances, but we haven't always made organizations work for human beings, and I think that's the challenge today, because people have many, many, many choices about what they do and where they work and how they want to work, and organizations got to be a place where people can feel like that's the place where they want to put their life energy, at least for part of their life journey. Our firm is located in Troy, New York, and there's about 12 of us who work out of Troy. And then we have consultants who are independent contractors around the globe. And it's just been a delight and joy of my life to be involved in this profession, which has helped me grow so significantly. I can't imagine being on earth, let alone being the person I am, without having OD and what I've learned from the various people that I've interacted with OD having influenced my life. So that's a little bit married free children, all those good things. But they're out of the house, so it's a really good time for that. And Judith?
Yeah, hi everyone. So Judith Katz, and I'm in Washington, D.C. Usually when Fred and I do this, we're in the same place. So this is all part of our virtual world that we're living in, managing this from 2 different places. But I've been a practitioner, God, it feels like all my life. I always go and talk about the work in terms of the work picked me, I didn't pick the work. But really started in the early 70s, was a member of NTL, have been a member of NTL since like 76. Which is Natural Training Labs, for those of you who don't know NTL. And then Fred and I have been business partners for the last 28 years. So I've been with Khalil Jamieson Consulting Group for the last 28 years. And, you know, I think the thing for us about today, and I loved your word, Fred, about it being an explorer, is I feel like organizations are changing so fast, dealing with such complex issues. And I think OD is just such an important part of helping our organizations really be successful in a time when, you know, it's going under massive change. And people, obviously, are such an important part of all of that. So, you know, as we think about and we talk today about our work, we really just want to engage with you about also what you're seeing and what you're thinking, because we know that each of you, I mean, I loved someone said that they're a firefighter. You know, how are we all in our different roles trying to make change, trying to influence organizations to be the most effective they can be, and make sure that people feel that they're contributing their best. So I just want to give a shout out also to Steve. Thank you, Steve, for your partnership. We've partnered on a number of different things, and Kim also for your work with ISODC in terms of the organization, which is doing great work around the globe. And I think the fact that it's global is really important, because as we've worked with multinationals around the globe, I mean, all of the concepts we'll share with you today are ones that the organizations that we're working with are really resonating to, because in many ways, I think, you know, whether you're working in Singapore, China, Japan, Mexico, Brazil, Europe, any place in Europe or Africa or the United States or Canada, all around the globe, I think organizations are struggling with how to really work more effectively with each other. And we'll share some of that today. So I guess we've got our slide about what we're here to do. So we're going to talk a little about collaboration. We're going to talk about some notions about judging and joining, the 4 keys that we've been using around inclusive behaviors. We're going to ask you to be thinking about yourself. How are you, you know, showing up in terms of your interactions? And we're hoping that this will leave you with some ideas on how to strengthen your partnerships and the interactions that you're having, so that you can accelerate the collaboration and teamwork that you're doing as well, and help others with that. So that's kind of our focus for today, and I guess we're ready for our slides. Or go ahead, Steve, I guess back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, and I'm going to hand it over to you just real quick before we do. I want to make sure we get everybody with you in the chat room. Judith's in the chat room, and so in the chat room for you out there, what intrigues you about today? What's the curiosity you bring? What's the question you bring? So if you could share that out there with Judith and Kim and John, who are out there monitoring and facilitating Chatland. And for those of you that arrived a little late, we'd like to get you over to the chat room. If you look in the control panel, you'll see a little link in the control panel that gives you a place for joining the chat. And you can go in there and see where the chat is, the link, and it's at 99, it's not 99, it's tinyurl.com/Steve Katie webinars. You head on over to there, and that's what it'll look like. You can open up one window with chat and one window with the slides that I'm going to share with you that Judith is going to take over now. And so, again, the question is, what intrigues you and what brings you today? And Judith, I'm going to switch the slides over to you, and you can take us on the journey for the rest of the webinar. And are you seeing anything in chat room that you want to share, Judith or John?
I just would say I love, Al, your statement about what, you know, new ideas about collaboration, how to make that happen when there are different values, perspectives, priorities, because I think that, to me, is the crux of a lot of what we're going to talk about in terms of how do you deal with those differences, leverage those differences to really get better outcomes. So that's going to be a lot of what we're going to be talking about as we spend some time with everyone today. So
Great.
Thanks for that as a way to start us.
Yeah, good. And so I sent the slides over to you. It should be something up on your screen that says, okay, there you go. You're up. I see you.
All right, we're here. So, Fred, anything else you want to say as a welcome?
No, I think we can go to slide number 2.
Here we go.
As I said, we're kind of explorers, and we're kind of looking at some of the challenges, the thousands of challenges facing human beings and organizations today. But think the big word is change, and I think the word is actually breakthroughs. And last week I was at the TED conference in Vancouver at the main stage, and the number of speakers after there was 4 or 5 days of just speaker after speaker with 18-minute talks talking about the world and the changing world around us. And it was just reinforcing how much the world is going to continue to shift right under our feet as we continue to live in this century, in this decade. And it's going to be massive. I don't think we can imagine all the changes that are happening. And if you just think about manufacturing and 3D printing is going to be real, real, real. And what this all is doing is localizing things. And what it's doing is distributing centers of power and making them less powerful. And so with a 3D printer, people can do manufacturing like they could never do manufacturing before in the history of the species. And so you talk about 3D printing, you talk about leadership needing to be different, about what people want from leaders and what leaders need to give. And just it's going to be very different than the boss of old. And then you talk about the way people interact and how those interactions are going to want to be different and need to be different as we go forward. And that's a lot of what Judith and I focus on. But just talking about some of the big changes that are coming about, all of the research that's being done on the human brain and what they're learning about that. And some of the stuff is just scary. So don't hear me saying it to be endorsing it. I'm just saying what I'm hearing. But talking about that we'll be able to take a pill, and that pill will automatically connect us to the cloud that has all of those servers up in the sky, and that we'll be able to think and connect to the cloud just by having taken that pill. Or robots and the human robotic interaction. That's going to be a new field. How do humans and robots get along? How do we interact? How do we collaborate? And then it's the whole physical body and how it's changing, how it's going to change, aided by computers and aided by mechanisms, and how that's going to be very different. You know, they had at TED the woman that lost her leg in Boston. And when she lost her leg, everything was like she can never dance again. And then some people from the MIT lab got together and they created her a leg. And she came out on the stage of TED, and for the first time since she lost her leg, she danced. This is a lot of technology that goes into allowing a human being to dance with a leg that's been created by human hands and machines. So we're in an incredible time where we're just probably in the beginning of a race that's going to go faster and faster. And things are going to change everything. So our book talks about 4 keys that change everything. We're in a world where everything is changing, and everything that we're bringing about, everything that we're inventing, everything that we're thinking about is going to be impacting everything that's in a moving tornado, it almost feels like. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about the challenge that it brings. And as Judith said, we got to think together. We got to be thinking partners, and that's what I feel like we are as we're on this webinar. We are when we're in our clients. It's thinking together. Nobody has all the answers. We all may have a piece of the puzzle, but nobody has all the answers, and some of the answers aren't even knowable at this point in time. So collaboration to me is the big word. How do we collaborate? How do we continue to learn more and more ways that we can make our collaboration happen faster and happen better? So on the slide, we talk about critical elements to teamwork and collaboration. You know, making problems visible. You know, again, moving away from some of those old paradigms of hide the problems, keep them small, don't let people know about it, to a world where we say we got to make problems travel fast. And we're finding now that the more people know, the crowd can solve problems much more than the individual. So how do we get the problems visible in our organizations and more people know? General McChrystal, who was in Afghanistan, was at TED, and he talked about, you know, they used to try to keep, the generals would keep the information to themselves. And now the position is, who needs to know and how fast can we tell them? Major paradigm shifts about how people are thinking. The faster decision making. Things are happening so fast. The old processes of decision making don't work. They're too slow. We need decisions made in hours or minutes, not days, weeks, or months. Leveraging the differences. Differences is everything. Differences is everywhere. We're all different. And then we have identity groups that have their difference that they can bring from their particular perspective. And so how do we have those differences not be seen as a problem, but so smooth, so integrated into who we are that differences isn't even a word we have to use anymore. It's just people interacting and being high performing. But until then, we got to go through those stages of really valuing, appreciating, leveraging, and learning about the differences, whether it's somebody from Japan and Australia and United States and Mexico coming together, how quickly can they capitalize on their differences versus see the differences in language or ways of thinking be a problem. And then finally, inclusive interactions where people feel like they belong and they're a part of it, and they feel like I am here because I have value, and I know I have value because every message that people give me say I have value and I have something to contribute. So for us, when we talk about the 4 keys, when we talk about our work, we got to move organizations to being able to do all those things significantly better than we're doing them today.
Yeah, and we've been having a great chat in the chat room too, Fred, at the same time. So a part of what a lot of people are talking about is, you know, some of what you say being scary, some of what you've seen and what the people on TED are talking about, and a lot of questions about resistance. You know, how do you deal when individual success is kind of what's valued? I think the thing that I've been kind of talking about in here, based on critical elements to teamwork and collaboration, is really getting back to what's the business problem we're trying to solve. You know, are you having the right set of decisions? Are we making decisions fast enough? I mean, when one of the clients that we worked with, you know, one of their concerns was that people didn't feel safe enough to make problems visible. And yet it was costing them in terms of customers or product development or the ways that teams were working together and not optimization. So to me, we have to always start with what's the business problem, what's the issue we're trying to solve. Even in an organization where perhaps this feels like there's resistance, we got to make it safe enough to be able to engage around those issues. And you know, some of you talked about even in terms of, well, what do you do in a virtual organization? I think a lot of these keys are about how do we bring this to have a common language, which we'll talk about in a moment. And for many of the organizations we're in, the leveraging differences is we really need diversity of thought. We really need to get to bringing all that best thinking together. And it's nice to say, but how we do it becomes kind of one of the challenges. So we're going to move to talk. Go ahead, Fred. You want to say anything?
Yeah, I would just say that I think the beauty of where we are as practitioners, all of us in this webinar, is that the world around these organizations and these leaders is also changing. And the fact that everything's in motion gives us leverage. So yes, some organizations may stand out and say, well, I'm not sure I want to do this or that or change. I don't need to be different, whatever. But the world is so pushing everybody to be different that everything is moving at the same time. And so I think that gives us leverage. So I feel like there's more openness to change in many of the clients, at least that we're seeing, than ever before. And I think us bringing in, all of us, bringing in data that talks about some of the challenges. People are talking about there needs to be new organizational structure. The hierarchy is dead. People are talking about we're still struggling with what does a leader really need to be today. I think the other thing that's going to have a major impact is the generational shift. Now, I'm in that baby boomer group, and, you know, we're slowly leaving out of organizations, although we're trying to hold on by our fingernails, but eventually we're moving out of organizations. And the next generation coming in, this feels normal. This doesn't take courage to do what we're talking about. This is what life is. And so I think as that evolution inside the organization takes place, there's going to be more and more support for the things that we're talking about, and people will be curious, and people will be saying we got to change, and people will see these things that some of us will see as scary and threatening, even leaders in organizations, as normal life as we move forward.
Just to build on that, Fred, I was at the Forum on Workplace Inclusion last week, and I was sitting at a table on a session on generational differences, and there was a young woman, a millennial, who was at the table, and we were talking, and she said, you know, my organization always asks the question about, do you intend to leave? And she said, and my response is, of course. You know, and she said, they think it's bad. She said, I'm thinking about it as, of course I intend to leave. I'm constantly looking for new opportunities. And it was such a great example of what's normal and what feels right to her. She said, I'm staying because I'm learning new things. I'm engaged. You know, there's a lot of things that are happening in this organization, but if I get a better offer, you know, I'm going someplace else. And so we're asking, you know, some of these organizations, we're so stuck in an old frame and an old way of thinking. instead of what's true and how do we build around it. And I think, whether it's thinking about hierarchy or whether it's thinking about knowledge and talent or how do we make problems visible, I think there's a major shift that's going on in the organizations that we're seeing. And I think it's really listening. I think someone here talked about listening together, thinking together. Janet, I think if we really, one of our skills as OD practitioners is if we really bring the right people together to think together, we can really change organizations much more rapidly.
Right on. And
I think that's such an important part of how we get to teamwork and collaboration. So I'm going to move us since we're on slide 2. So I just want to kind of briefly talk a little bit about our definition of inclusion, because for us, it fits so much around teamwork and collaboration, and we see that the need for inclusion is really an important part of getting to that teamwork and collaboration. So a lot of organizations talk about inclusive culture or inclusive interactions, and for us, there's kind of 3 elements to this definition. One is that people have a sense of belonging, so that they really feel that pride or that sense of connection to the organization. And even this young woman who's a millennial, she felt pride and she loved the organization she was a part of. But that wasn't enough. Secondly, it's feeling respected, valued, and seen for who we are as individuals. And I think this is really where our differences become so important. Do I know enough about what you need to do your best work? Do I know something about you personally? Do I have a sense of, are you an introvert, an extrovert? Is there something in terms of, you need time to think, you need to talk about it out loud? What are the ways in which you really can do your best work? So I need to know who you are. And, we're in some organizations where managers never even know their people. They're in a virtual organization. People never even had a conversation with their manager or their team members. So people don't really know one another to know and feel respected, valued, and seen for who they are. They know them as a job responsibility, not necessarily in terms of something more about them to do their best. And then lastly, which we think is so important, is that there's a level of supportive energy and commitment from leaders, colleagues, and others so that both individually and collectively we can do our best work. Now that's a mouthful, but to me it speaks to, when I give a presentation, am I getting supportive energy or people telling me all the things that are wrong? Am I getting, when I need information from another department, are they looking at me skeptically, or are they engaging with me in a way that's willing to tell me, what that information is so that we can achieve the business goals and the organizational goals? So to us, the level of supportive energy and commitment is from our leaders, our colleagues, our peers, all of that. And it's not just my doing well, it's about us all doing well. And I know there was a question here, and I can't remember who it was, but the question was about what about in an organization where there's individual success? Well, to me, that would be saying that that organization's got to bump up its expectations, because if one succeeds or one department succeeds, can you really be successful as an organization? And I think this is saying, no, we need everybody succeeding, we need everybody contributing, and we need to be giving that supportive energy so that we can really do shared success and common goals and shared success. So with that definition, I got a great question here. How do you manage inclusion when people's behavior violates our values? A nice way to say people are jerks. I think the issue is what's the expectation of what's expected of people? And I think on the individual level, first we want to make sure people are feeling like they matter and that they belong, that they feel respected, that they're getting that supportive energy. But if people are engaging in a way that's violating that behavior, then you're really not getting an inclusive organization.
I would just say, I think we're going to get a place where organizations are going to have to get very explicit about their expectations of people, expectations of leaders, expectations of everybody in the organization around these dimensions that we're talking about. And that people who are outliers are going to be outliers, and they're going to have to either shape up or get out of the organization. I mean, Judith and I have been doing this long enough when sexism was rampant in organizations, sexual harassment was rampant in organizations, and people were like, you're never going to get it out of organizations, you're never going to get people to stop this, people are just this way. And now look at it, if there's a charge or a suspicion of harassment or something that's sexist in an organization that stands out, organizations are addressing it. It's not tolerated. You're an outlier if you're doing something that's harassing in any way. Now, maybe that's not everywhere, but that sure is a lot of places. So something that we thought was rampant in human nature and we couldn't change has changed. So I want to be very optimistic about getting clear about some of these other expectations around how people interact and what's expected of people. And I think over time, the outliers will stand out versus be able to blend in.
Right. I have a quick question, Fred, for you in regard to that. Could you speak a little bit to what you see as expectations versus principles, and how people can move nimbly within the context of principles versus expectations, and do we need more of one or the other? And when I think of principle, I think of a general guideline, and an expectation, maybe you might think of it more like that. And then I think of rules, which are very specific requirements that have to be verified and applied.
Yeah, rules frighten me because I think we're living in a world that any rule we create today could be not right tomorrow. So I like your term around guidelines. I think expectations to me relate to what, as a member of this entity, this organization, here's the expectation of you as a leader. And I'm on such a broad level because I think we got a lot of work to do. You will talk to your people once a week. You know, I'm on that kind of basic level. You will, yesterday, I was with a client we're working with, and people talked about, well, when we interact with our supervisors, they yell at us and they slam doors. Okay, we should have an expectation that says, you can supervise and lead people and don't have to yell and don't have to slam doors in their faces. So I'm on some kind of ways of interacting with people that are just civil. And then I would raise the upper, that's the lowest level. Then above that is, how do we get to high performance? And then above that, how do we help people do their best work? And so looking at expectations around how to be with people so we accomplish that. I think the principles I would put in the category of values, which I'd probably put closer to platitudes, but the expectations to be would be more of almost, you know, not as literally this, but almost do's and don'ts for what we expect of people in the organization.
That's great. Okay, so we actually wanted to ask you a question on the inclusion definition. And when you think about those three parts of the definition, that people feel like they have a sense of belonging, they feel respected, valued, and seen for who they are, and that the level of, again, the level of supportive energy that they experience so that everyone can do their best work, where would you put your organization? And I know that's a big span, but just put some numbers in the chat room in terms of where you might see your organization, you know, on a 0 to 10 scale. 0 would be, we are not inclusive at all. In fact, it's not the place I want to be, to 10, you know, highly inclusive. Highly inclusive and people really kind of meeting all three of those expectations. So where would you put your organization? So we got a 6.5. I'll just kind of read out a little bit of the numbers as they're kind of putting in there. 6s, a 5, a 5. Again,
Fred,
when you...
Fred, I'm curious, where would you put Khalil Jameson?
You really want me multitasking on this call, don't you?
I do. Keep it back and forth going.
You're trying to help me use my whole brain. I understand. We're way beyond that 10% thing. I would put us. Now I'm the leader, and leaders usually inflate what they think they see, but I would put us in that, probably around that 8 category. Let me see. People's sense of belonging really high, 10. Feeling respected and valued and John, that's got to be an 8 or 9. Supportive energy, I think that's a place where I would probably put us in the 7 or 8. I think we have our good days and we have our not so good days, and some of it is rushing, some of it is just moving fast. I know that's for myself. Sometimes I move too fast to actually tell people what I appreciate along the way. So that would kind of be my scores.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So we've got from a 4.8, we've got some 5s, we've got a 4. Somebody said they've moved from a 3 to a 7 from a couple of years ago. Some 8s. The one question that I have here from Sherry, thanks Sherry, is one of the things she's talking about is the importance of valuing individual work as well as not only teamwork. And I think that's, you know, for us, it's not a one or the other. It's kind of like there's things that I need to do by myself, but I may want thinking partners in, and then there's some things we need to do because of the flow of the work that we need to do across the organization. And so, you know, I think again, I think any organization that's all one thing is going to be problematic. but I think the issue becomes how do we really balance that in some ways? And I think sometimes some organizations have become so focused on the individual that we've lost the team. I don't see too many organizations that are so focused on team that they've lost the individual, but there are some. So,
there's a lot of data about engagement and effectiveness. I mean, Gallup's done a lot of work around that and others. So the jury's in on that one, that there's a direct correlation between engagement, effectiveness, and results of the organization. So I think that's why the collaboration word is going to get bigger and bigger. And as I was kind of sitting in the audience the other day, I was thinking collaboration consultants and collaboration coaches are going to be one of the upcoming fields for what organization is going to be requesting of people.
Okay, I'm going to move us. Got great comments here, and there's Al's question is there any data or research showing the relationship between supportive and engagement or effectiveness?
That's what I was responding to, Judith.
Yeah. Okay, good. I didn't know you got it, Fred. Great. There we go. All right, we're going to go to a new slide and kind of move this topic along. So one of the things that we've really been thinking a lot about that's been foundational in this question about how do you create inclusiveness in an organization and interactions was this question about a choice that we think about how we're engaging with each other. And Fred and I were actually in a client system about a year ago, and we're still playing with this idea. So this is kind of new thinking still. And we were in this organization, and we were beginning a workshop with a 16-day, four-day sessions, education capability building with internal change agents, who we had worked with for the past 2 years. So I had good relationships with them and people that I felt very connected with. But we did, as we began a session, we did a moment, what we call a moment of focus, to really begin getting grounded, being present in the room. And I became aware of some anxiety, some concern in me about, was this group going to join us or judge us? And this kind of led us down a path of really thinking about how do we really create fundamentally a new set of interactions that's going to change the ways in which we see our colleagues and engage with them. So we want to talk a little bit about this. I know our time is moving fast, but we're going to kind of get this. So I'm going to ask you to just, for those of you in the chat room, really quickly, what are your feelings, your thoughts, your reactions, experiences, when you think someone's interacting with you in a judging mode, from a judging mode? So what do you think? What do you feel? How do you engage? How do you respond back to them when you think someone's interacting with you in a judging mode? And we'll just wait.
It's an interesting thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Fred.
Go ahead. Go. It's Judith.
I was just going to share kind of one thing that I learned from and really spoke to me in terms of my own teaching and my work. A lot of times when I'm teaching, and I sometimes feel like I'm being judged. And I look around the room, and I notice sometimes I'll teach to the frowner. I'll start trying to make them smile, but then I feel like then I'm ignoring all the smilers, and then they start frowning, and then and so sometimes my feelings are sometimes when I'm being judged are fear, and sometimes concern that they're not understanding me, and then I've learned over time that really drives me to know who I am and what I care about, and to stand in that, and because that's what people want to know. Yeah. And then sometimes like checking my projections and all those kinds of things. And one thing that was really good in one of our webinars, a guy talked about a book on research about if you make decisions out of fear versus love. And that when a person finds themselves making decisions based on fear, they're going down a path that's going to cause them problems.
Absolutely.
And when I want to do an activity or I want to do an intervention with an organization, I'm afraid they won't accept doing an appreciative inquiry interviews because it's too fluffy or something with artistic renditions. And I'm afraid to do it because they won't like it. And then they love it, and they show me that it was all my stuff. Those are some of the things that, happen for me when I feel like I'm being judged in my work.
That's great. And I think others on the others have said things, when I feel judged, I tend to shut down. I get into a telling mode. I feel defensive. I explain my position. I mean, all of those things. I can become back into a judging mode. Then I feel nervous. I feel fear. So I think a lot of the ways in which we get into that place is either our projections. I get more into my own stuff. All of those things. Some great, somebody says I try to integrate humor. So we're spending a lot of our energy and resources on that. when somebody's judging us. And there's some great comments in the chat room. So same question. How about when we're in joining mode? When your feelings, thoughts, reactions, experiences, when you think someone's interacting with you in a joining mode. So again, kind of.
That's a good one. That's a really good one, Judith. I have a thought on that, but I'll throw it over to Kim. Kim, do you have a thought on that? Do you want to share your thought?
So I was just thinking about what you were talking about the moment of focus.
Mm-hmm.
So when I teach night classes, and I learned this from you all at Benedictine, when you came for lecture series, when I teach night classes, I use the 2 minutes of focus, and it really allows people to switch gears and begin class, and they're much more open and they're joining, and it's just a wonderful tool.
I love that. That's great. That's
great. Well, it's that whole.
Go ahead, Fred.
I was going to say it's that whole thing about slowing down to go fast.
Yes.
If we want to be effective, if we want to be grounded, if we want to be able to have breakthroughs, it's not just going fast and going faster and going faster and going faster, because there's a tendency that you'll run right over the cliff. But there's a process of, I always like to joke, but it's not a joke. Marathoners don't run the same speed the whole race. They vary their speed throughout the race. And as we're kind of living this life of a series of marathons, we got to create processes which allow us to slow down, meditate, think, reflect. Thinking time, it was a concept that used to be around once in organizations that's been missing for many years now. But thinking time so that people can do their best and be able to then move faster. So that 2 minutes of focus allows people to kind of catch up with themselves.
That's great. And I think a lot of these comments that people had here about being comfortable, relaxed, really being able to feel valued and worthwhile, creative, open, collaborative, win-win, engaged, want to hear others' perspectives. All of that I think is really what we kind of became really aware of in terms of how powerful when I'm in judging or joining mode is. I don't think it's easy to go to joining mode, but I think it's, Fred and I both have been experimenting with this so that we can really move to that. So what we've created was kind of a little chart here, but I think it really just pulls in everything people have been saying. It's an eye chart here. I know you got to try to figure it out. But I think the two things I would just highlight is when I feel joined, I really give the benefit of the doubt. I really extend trust. I'm really working to a win-win, as everybody talked about. When I feel joined, I feel bigger, and then I'm reinforcing being in joining mode. I think, as people talked about, when I'm feeling judged, I'm going to be withholding. Sometimes I think we're in organizations where people have been there long term. I may hold on a lot to the past. I don't give the benefit of the doubt. And I think the behaviors then move into, well, if I'm judged, I'm going to judge you. And one of the questions that was here was somebody said, well, we could start off in joining, but we can quickly get to judging. I think when others are getting to judging, I think even if I stay in a joining mode, I can move people and move the conversation into more about how we partner. And so I think it's kind of not being reactive, but I think particularly as OD practitioners, I think our challenge is to how do we get into the joining mode. It doesn't mean that we're not assessing the situation, we're not making assessments. Joining doesn't mean I'm always agreeing, but I'm coming out of it, I'm coming into that conversation in a way that says, I'm here to support and help you. And I think that's where the supportive energy dimension is. It's not I'm coming in a way to make you feel small or to show you all the flaws. And we work with a lot of scientists. We work with a lot of people who have academic backgrounds. I'm one of them. And, I grew up looking for the holes. I grew up looking at where the problems are. And I'm a German Jew. So I got it from my parents, too. It's like, where's the problem? What's wrong? All of that. And, so it's really about stopping myself, slowing myself down, and saying, what do I agree with? Where can I partner? And what can I bring and we'll talk about the 4 keys, bring another point of view that can help people see something different. So I think as we're thinking about this, it's really kind of what's the stance I'm taking. And we worked with one leader who really was into, I'm judging, I can't get there. He said, okay, judge faster. Just judge faster and get to joining quicker. So we would say this is a major concept that we've been putting into organizations. that have really begun to use that language and begin to talk about it. So Fred, I'm going to move this over to you, and maybe we can start talking a little bit about the 4 keys, and maybe you can just focus on a couple of them.
Correct. I agree. We have about 10 minutes left, correct?
Yeah.
So these are 12 behaviors that kind of have evolved for us over the years. And then most recently, the 4 that you're seeing are the 4 that kind of stand out. As someone said, oh, looking at the 12, they're all very, very important. But these 4 are the 4 that really change things. These are the 4 that are breakthroughs. And I'm going to talk about the first 2 quickly. And then the third one I'll talk about a little bit more. And then Judith will finish up our time with you talking about the 4th one. The first one is leading discomfort. And just a short story about that one is we live in a time of change. If you're in a time of change, then it's absolutely critical that we're going to move into some new space, do new things, be willing to explore, be curious, be able to take risk. And a lot of it is experiment, 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 and learn. It's prototype. All those words that are very up these days, which really talk about leading to some things that's not status quo. And so how do we have people in our organizations being willing to be uncomfortable, which has not been normative in many organizations. The goal has been be comfortable, make yourself comfortable. How do we smooth things out? Don't rock the boat. Stay where we are. And yet we live in a time now, stay where you are is the beginning of the cycle of the end of the organization. That staying where you are means you're going to be left behind. Staying where you are means that you are no longer going to be competitive. If you're not better today than you were yesterday, you're beginning to lose. So helping organizations know that, and on an individual level, having people realize that if my goal is to be comfortable, I'm going to put myself in a disadvantage. That I got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's the real new way that we all have to operate, is that I got to let discomfort be something that I get a competency around and have comfort around. And that's a shift for many people. The next one is listen as an ally, which is really taking listening to another level, not just listening to understand, not just listening, waiting to interrupt them so I can give them my point of view, but really listening deeply and listening in a way that I am trying, again, it goes back to joining. I am partnering with this person. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything they say, but I am fully here. One of the things I heard someone say about a leader, I was doing a 360 recently, they said when you're with that leader and you're talking with him, that you feel like you're the most important person on earth. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that is so wonderful. And I feel like that's what listening as an ally is. Listening as an ally is that when I'm engaging with you and I'm listening to you, I am really there for you. And I am engaging you, and I want to hear what you have to say. Most people are frustrated because people don't listen to them. They don't feel like they can get their message out. You know, we have unions and strikes and traumas in organizations and people leaving out of upset because nobody took the time to really listen to their story. People are not even asking for agreement half the time. They're asking for people who will really just be there for them, be there with them. My favorite word is be a witness. Be a witness to what's going on in their experience. So those are 2 of the 4 keys. The next one I'll talk a little more about, but quickly since our time is running out. It's state your intent and your intensity. And with all of these, if you look at the PowerPoint when you get it, they have questions with them. So if we had time, we'd be asking for some of your scores around them, but we're going to keep moving for our last few minutes. This one, intensity, really comes out of when leaders speak, there's a tendency to think that everything they say is a to-do, that everything they say is go do it right now. And what we've been trying to do with the 4 keys is really create some common language in organizations. Because as we have differences in organization domestically, in whichever country you're talking about, and then globally, we all have different ways of interpreting this thing. So if people say, I need you to listen as an ally, I understand what's going on, or I need to lead into discomfort, people know what's happening. And sometimes without a common language around interaction, we have a common language around lean and some other processes, but we always don't have common language around interactions. And what the intent is, our book on the 4 keys, is to create that common language. So around intent and intensity, we created, if you go to the next slide, you go to a chart which talks about some of the things that I say are notions. They're just an idea. They're a shower thought. I don't need anybody to do anything with it. It's just something that's passing by in my mind. If it makes sense to you, do it. Then there's a stake like a stake in the ground, like you go camping. And that is like, this is something I have some commitment to, I have some passion around, but I can move it. Because when you go camping, you're intending to move that tent. I can move it, but I need to just let you know that I have some commitment to it. But I'm willing to get smarter because no one of us is as smart as all of us, and I'm open to hearing other people's thoughts and feelings about it, and I'm willing to move that stake. A boulder is something I feel pretty strongly about, and I got a strong position about, and it's a big rock that you're going to have to move. It's not going to take it. I always think of boulders as, if you want me to move my boulder, either bring data or bring friends, but no one person is probably going to get me to move a boulder. And then the last one is Tombstones, which is kind of like, this is me. This is where I am. This is my final resting place. I'm not moving this. In organizations, there are often tombstones, especially when you are out in the field and not in the corporate headquarters and the edict comes down. Sometimes people waste a lot of time arguing about corporate tombstones when the organization has said, we will do this. Often there are boulders. They can be moved, but we need to be aware of them. And all this is saying, a leader when they talk, and all of us when we talk, saying this is a notion, this is a stake, this is a boulder, this is a tombstone, to add clarity. And the more the organization is global, the more there are people talking from different countries, different cultures. It's just critical that we have language that allows us to be clear, because if not, in the email world, everything sounds like a boulder. And for many leaders, because I have passion, it sounds like my passion means it's a boulder or a tombstone, when it might just be something that I want to get my thinking behind. So Judith, I'll stop there on that.
Great. All right, and I'll do the last one. So, and all of these, I mean, as Fred said, whether you're working in a virtual team, even particularly working in a virtual team, it's even more helpful to have a common language. I mean, as we were working with people, and we'd have calls from people all over the globe, it helped people to be able to stop the conversation or get their voice in, particularly when you have cultural differences, to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm going to lean into discomfort here. And it kind of enabled people to have a way into the conversation. So the last one, which I really think speaks to how do you bring those different points of view together, is really about enabling people to share their street corner and really accepting people's experiences or voice as true for them. So if you look at the diagram, what you see is basically it's an intersection. And if you think about if there was an accident in that intersection in the middle, you would ask people in the middle, you would ask people on every street corner about what they saw. And so that we could get the full picture of what really happened. Because you know the people in the cars might not necessarily see anything in terms of the whole picture, and people on one corner might have only seen one thing that happened. As we're solving complex problems in organizations, we need to not only ask people who are directly involved in the middle, but people who might have a perspective from all corners to really be able to get the full picture. And for us, what we find in most organizations is we might ask somebody who has a different point of view, and then we tell them how they're wrong, instead of really being able to use those different perspectives and see, you know, do we have the right people here? Are there somebody that's missing? You know, do we have the right people doing the right work at the right time? This is a way to also get differences to the table without it being seen as conflictual. Because what we found when clients use a language of here's my street corner, it's kind of being more curious about, oh, how is it you see it differently versus it being wrong. And I think this has changed. This language, along with notion stakes boulders and some of the other dimensions that we've talked about, leaning into comfort, listen as an ally, together those 4 keys have really enabled people to open up their collaboration, open up their engagement with others in a way that's helping the organization be more productive. So those are the 4 keys. As Fred said, there's 8 sustaining behaviors. Those are kind of accelerate the organization, but they're not alone enough. The 8 behaviors also help support that. And we will send the deck to people so that you can really make sure that people feel, you know, can see what we have here. The one thing I would say is I know the language sounds a little goofy sometimes, and people feel a little uncomfortable about it. But, you know, as we've worked in organizations that have done Lean Six Sigma, and people talk about Gembas, and they talk about Kaizens and tiers, you know, we've been able to change the language of business. We need to really talk about the language of people. And we have no standard work around people. So in organizations, every leader kind of does their own thing, and every organization kind of does their own thing. What we found is when we create that standard work, it really facilitates the engagement, the teamwork, the collaboration, and the ways of working together. So with that, I will turn it back over to Steve and see what else we need to say as we're kind of moving ourselves to closure. And I just want to thank everybody for being with us today and for the great conversations on the chat. I feel like we could have another whole 2 hours just talking about the chat conversations.
Yes,
Yeah.
I so agree. And this is so much fun. And a couple things come to mind as we wrap up. One is I love hearing the blended voice of the two of you. I think there's so much we can learn from just simply how you two together talk about and describe the things that we're wrestling with, giving words to it and giving us practical ways of thinking and dealing with it. It's really beautiful to see, and I absolutely appreciated it. My reaction was that, one of them was that I wanted to make sure I get the email out to everybody saying, hey, if you weren't there, you need to listen to this. This was a super, super session with you all. And the other is just the framework and the model and how it resonates and how simple it is to help us understand what perspective we come from. That has been so helpful in your 4 keys. So I thank you very much for all of that. And as we wrap up, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to just a couple wrap-up questions for you all out there. And the one thing that I'd like to say is that we aren't done, and I'd love to have you all back to have more conversations, and ask the group as you check out what has been your bumper sticker takeaway, and you might even say what's the question, if you like, that you'd love to see Judith and Fred elaborate on in another session, if we could go deeper. So maybe what is that key word or phrase takeaway, and maybe what's the one thing you'd love to hear more about after today? What are you still curious about? And then we'll go from there. But let's just do a brief checkout with everybody that's here. So I'll start with Kim, and we can touch base with Kay, touch base with John, and then check out with Fred, you, and then Judith, you can maybe summarize your takeaway and thoughts on today, as well as what you're seeing in the chat room, and then we'll wrap up. So let's go ahead and start.
So this is Kim. Fred and Judith, I just want to say thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm so sad that our time is up for today. I wish it could go on for a couple more hours. And I just really hope that our paths cross again in the very near future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.
Kay or John? Hey, John?
This is John. 2 key takeaways. One is the language of the people. I really would like to have another conversation on that. That's great. And then what Fred said earlier about collaboration consulting, or teaching people how to be more collaborative, and how important that is. So thank you both. I truly appreciate it. And then and then for the audience, as you're doing your bumper stickers, remember that Judith and Fred will be back with us again at the end of April. And so that's on the final slide. So I definitely think that the comments should dovetail, and we'll help that inform the next session. So thanks, everyone.
Kay, anything you want to share?
First of all, I just love hearing Fred and Judith as much as I love working with them, and there's such amazing takeaways from this concept, and we use these 4 keys so very often in our work. So I completely agree that the common language really, really helps, and that's my bumper sticker.
Thank you. Fred, how about you?
I love the comments that people have made. It just reminds me how brilliant we are in our field, and how much we all have to contribute to one another's thinking, and we have so few forums. So I'm very appreciative of this webinar, because we have so few forums to really bring our thinking together, so we can have more than any one of us would have individually. So I'm walking away thinking, how do we do this more, not only this way, but also face to face, so that the world needs us. The world needs our thinking, and we got to figure out ways of giving that thinking to the world.
Yeah, I guess the summary would be, I just echo everything you said, Fred, and everyone else has said. And I think having time as OD practitioners for us to really slow down, think together, because the challenges that our organizations and our clients are facing are so big that we can't do our best work unless we're grounded and centered. And so, I just always take out so much by engaging with people and just even hearing what you're thinking about or the questions you're raising. So I just want to thank everyone for their time. You know, an hour of a day is a long time given all that's on people's plates, and just being great thinking partners and asking the right questions and the right challenges. So thanks, everybody.
And John, what are some key words you're seeing in Chatland? Any key words or phrases you want to just ramble off a few?
Again, there was the language of the people, learning in discomfort, to hear others' differences are additive. Thank you for sharing your work. Opportunities for collaboration consulting, that's a specialty that resonated with Lisa. Lena said that the ISODC is very thankful to have had a chance to take part of the conversation. Walter said it was fantastic. Proud to be a part of the work. Daniela said the metaphor of the woman who danced with the new leg was great. There's more. I mean, Dennis appreciated the power of the perspective of judging versus joining. Lisa said that the emphasis on clear communication. Sherry says thank you. Bringing in fun language helps from Cynthia. Jeremy says how we communicate in organizations and personal lives will help add value to our relationship. Some more thank yous. Learning to rip. Nice modeling of the verbal, visual, and visceral from Al. And Dina says, Fred and Judith, thank you for out to ISODC back in the fall. This was a great session.
Awesome. So as we close, a couple ways to stay connected and continue our work. And Fred, you said it, we have a lot to share. And my passion personally is to bring people and their communities of practice together to help us all be more powerful together and doing good work in the world. And I want to create, my hope is to create a space, a safe space for all of the great communities of practice to feel comfortable enough to come together and really collaborate on a new level as we approach a new era in our world. And so we can do that through different things. And so for all of you out there, there's an ODJ special issue coming up that you can submit articles to, case studies. You can check out that link to learn more. We have a couple conferences with ISODC coming up, and you can click on, you can go to that link there to find out about that. We have the upcoming webinars around building resilience and accelerate collaboration. So we've got two really cool ones coming up that are focused on OD practitioner and publications there. And then if you'd like, come and join us. And Judith and Fred, I'm hoping maybe you or somebody from your firm or you all can pop in and see what some reactions are from the group if you have additional questions or if they want to know more or get some, just follow up on with you. Go to tinyurl.com/nexus for change LinkedIn and join us at LinkedIn and share some of your thoughts and continue the conversation there. And so with that, Judith, any closing words?
Have a great day and keep taking care of yourselves, everybody. The world needs us.
Yes. Thank you, Fred.
What?
Oh.
Sorry, I had muted myself. All good. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.